Good evening, Robinson families. We are so excited that you're here and that you were able to join us tonight for our Parent Information Night to help you understand our remote school opening. Tonight, I'm very excited to be joined by Mrs. Teresa Murphy, our school superintendent, Mr. Ryan Gentili, our assistant principal, Mrs. Nancy Beyer, our assistant elementary special education director, Mr. Michael Connolly, our assistant superintendent for teaching and learning, is here in our listening audience. And Mrs. Nicole Reynolds, our office assistant, is here as well to help us moderate the questions that you might have throughout this presentation. And my name is Dr. Carrie Sankey, and I'm the principal here at the Robinson School. So first, we'll start with a brief agenda. The purpose for tonight's presentation is to provide information to all of you to help you understand the logistics of phase 1 of school reopening and the improvements that we've made since the spring. Our presentation will take approximately 40 minutes, and we will provide time at the end for questions via the comments section of your screen right over to the right-hand side. We will conclude our presentation at approximately 8:15. So, on to our explanation about remote learning. Our first official day of school for all students will be Wednesday, September 16th for kindergarten through grade 2. In the past, our kindergarten students started a couple of days after grades 1 and 2. This year, with our opening being remote, we felt that it was best to have everyone start on the same day. The kindergarten teachers have typically held parent orientations in the past during the 2 days prior to students coming in. The kindergarten teachers will be holding these orientations for parents remotely, and these will be scheduled prior to September 16th. We do hope to transition to a hybrid model for all students by mid-October. Students will be assigned to 2 cohorts according to last name. These cohorts will be communicated to students on their placement letters. We know that some of our Robinson families have opted to have their students remain in the remote learning model even after we open in the hybrid model. It is very important that we note that those families that have opted to have their students remain in the remote learning model will have a change in their teacher assignment. Those changes will also be communicated to you in a timely manner. We will send communication to all of those families who have opted to remain in the remote model to let them know who their remote teachers will be. Our remote learning for the fall reflects significant improvements from what we were able to offer last spring. Last spring, our emphasis was on maintaining connections with students and providing enriching learning opportunities. We did eventually move to new learning later in the spring, while we all learned how to use the Google tools. Over the summer, our Robinson teachers have been working on curriculum in preparation to hit the ground running in a variety of possible models. Social and emotional learning is of greatest importance to all of us as we start the new year. We know that we're going to need to work differently to make connections and build community with our students and families. Our teachers have designed social and emotional lessons and activities for students that will help them acclimate to learning and start the year. Our teachers have also revised curriculum pacing according to the Massachusetts Curriculum Framework's Power Standards and have developed a variety of plans for synchronous and asynchronous learning. Lastly, they have worked to determine lists of materials that students will need at each grade level in order to learn successfully at home. Student curricular materials and toolkits will be a part of the distribution of materials that will happen prior to school starting. In addition to the work that has been done this summer to improve our remote model, our expectations going into the new year will be significantly increased as well. All students and families can expect to have a clearly communicated daily remote learning schedule. This schedule will be teacher-directed and communicated to you by your student's classroom teacher in order to meet the needs of all students in the classroom. The daily schedule, again, will include synchronous or live direct instruction by the classroom, special education, reading, and specialist teachers in whole or small groups. In addition, students will also have some asynchronous learning or learning through video presentations or practice on learning platforms, such as our Journeys and Envisions 2.0 platforms, IXL, ABCYA, Typetastic, and BrainPop. On the next slide, Mr. Gentili will explain in further detail what a student's day could look like.
Thank you, Carrie, and a big welcome to our Robinson families. This model schedule provides an example of what a student day will likely consist of. The important things to notice here are the scheduled times for Google Meets. Google Meets will provide that face-to-face time for students and their teachers throughout the day. As you can see here, there are scheduled Google Meets during morning meeting, literacy, math, specials time, and a daily wrap-up. We want to ensure all students are able to meet with their teachers to start and end their day. Aside from the expected delivery of academics, which are aligned with our state curriculum frameworks, a major area of focus for us will be the students' social and emotional learning. Our teachers have been working this summer on strategies and activities for supporting students in building connection and community within a remote classroom. As students and teachers delve into the academic blocks indicated on this model schedule, you will see that there's time built in for whole group, small group, and independent work within a 120-minute literacy block and a 60-minute math block. Teachers will provide an overview of the objectives for the daily lesson, provide modeling of concepts and skills, and welcome discussion and answer questions during the whole group segment Google Meet. Teachers will then transition to small group Google Meet time with small groups of students to focus on differentiated skills and concepts instruction. Teachers will communicate the time during which these small groups will occur each day. Special education teachers will also meet with students in a small Google Meet format. Specialist teachers' lessons will be included in the daily schedule. Specialist teachers will use a combination of live Google Meets and Screencastify videos to provide instruction in art, music, and physical education. The scheduled times and modality of instruction for these lessons will be included in the daily schedule. Again, this is a sample schedule, and as we get started with remote learning, classroom teachers will be communicating with you about their specific classroom schedules. Before we go to the next slide, Nicole, are there any questions related to this slide that we can address at this time? All right.
Not currently, no.
Next. Thank you, Nicole. Next, Carrie's going to address additional changes to our remote schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Gentili. So, in addition to the model student schedule, again, we are in the process of working out the final details. We will also be setting clear expectations for all students with regard to grading and attendance. We expect that all students will participate in daily learning following this specific schedule, determined by their classroom teacher, and that all teachers will take attendance in the morning during a live Google morning meeting. We expect that students will continue to participate in live, whole, and small groups with teachers throughout the day. We do understand that every family has unique needs in this remote learning situation. We strongly encourage two-way communication between school and home to work out attendance situations as they arise. Students will also be expected to complete classwork that is planned each day. Classroom assignments will be turned in electronically, likely using a platform such as the Google Classroom. Last spring, we used Robinson Remote Learning Site as a repository for all grade level learning activities. This fall, we will be training our teachers prior to the start of school on how to use Google Classroom. Google Classroom has many advantages for families and students since each classroom teacher will be able to create their own classroom and invite students, specialist teachers, special education teachers, and reading specialists to be members. In addition, Google Classroom has the ability to provide a single student sign-on, and we are also working on those details as well. What that means is that students sign Students sign into Google Classroom and is able to access learning with just the click of a button. At the start of remote learning, classroom teachers will provide more information for you about what their schedule and Google Classroom looks like and how you and your student will be able to access it. Some other changes that we have in our new remote learning model will include information about what we do during a typical school year. So for example, students in grades 1 and 2 typically receive a report card in November, March, and June. In kindergarten, students receive a report card in March and in June. All students are going to have parent-teacher conferences in December and in April, just as we would during a typical school year. We plan on keeping all of these things the same. In order for us to complete report cards and parent conferences, we will be determining how best to administer assessments and collect student work. Mr. Gentile is going to talk next about our distribution of student materials.
Thank you, Carrie. The communication regarding the distribution of materials will come your way by a principal newsletter, so please be on the lookout for that in the coming weeks. We're going to try to utilize a drive-by pickup approach, which is similar to how we did the distribution in the spring. We're going to be distributing all of the materials your student will need to learn remotely. These materials will include the hardcover literacy texts, literacy workbooks, and math workbooks. Teachers have also created student toolkits that have items such as scissors, crayons, glue sticks, etc. to work at home. We are currently working with our technology department to prepare for the distribution of Chromebooks for all students. We will send out a newsletter and more detailed information about how to pick up these items very soon. Okay? And along with those Chromebook pickups, we will also provide your student with their Google credentials. So that would be their username and their password. So they can have that at home as well. Next, we're really excited to have Superintendent Murphy in attendance with us this evening, and she's going to talk a little bit about the virtual remote cohort.
Thank you, Mr. Gentile. Yes, I'd like to speak for just a couple minutes about the virtual remote cohort. That is the model that is for families who have decided that they don't wish to participate with a district decision to have in-person learning to any degree. So, for example, this evening, the presentation is on phase 1 of reopening, which is a remote start, but moving to hybrid very soon in October. So this would be for families who do not want their students to go on to hybrid. They want to keep them at home all year. Students in this cohort, called the virtual remote cohort, will remain enrolled in the Mansfield Public Schools. However, they will learn remotely. The district is working to the extent possible to have Mansfield's teachers instruct these students. Now, certainly we may have to augment the instruction by using one or more of the state virtual learning vendors. But for example, at the Robinson School, for the number of students who have enrolled in the virtual remote cohort, that we had sent out the survey, and as of last night, we have about 2 classes per grade at kindergarten, first and second, who will be participating in learning remotely in the virtual remote cohort. So that means that there will be 2 kindergarten, 2 first grade, and 2 second grade teachers who will teach those classes of students. Those students will receive their teacher names at the same time that all of the other placement letters go out. Okay, so that right now, that's the number of students that we're working with, about 2 classes of kindergarten, of first grade and second grade. Now, certainly, I would like to say that we're using available Mansfield staff. So for example, we do have some of our teachers who also have some of the same needs as our students, and they need to teach remotely. And that is why they would be working with our students. There may be some other teachers that we are going to be assigning remote teaching too. They're going to use our existing curriculum, which is aligned to our grade level and district plans. They're going to use the district offered technology because, again, they are Mansfield Public School students just enrolled in the virtual remote cohort. The pacing will be aligned with the other cohorts. Our reason for that is because that is how they'll get through the curriculum for the year at grade level. And another reason is there may be some families that choose to begin with the virtual remote cohort and may decide to eventually transition into the hybrid model. I do ask that families be mindful of the fact that we are staffing based on the students' commitment to the virtual remote cohort. So that does not mean that you can never move back. However, it does mean that 2 kindergarten, 2 first grade, and 2 second grade teachers are being pulled out of the students who are going to school at Robinson in the schoolhouse itself, and they will be working with those students. So for everyone who then leaves the virtual remote, that certainly will reduce class size in the virtual classes. However, it would be increasing class sizes in the regular classroom. So certainly you have that opportunity. We are a public school. It would not be an overnight change from virtual to hybrid. However, again, I'm just asking families, as you're looking at this decision that you're making, just be mindful of the fact that we are staffing based on your family's choices. And again, as I've mentioned, we've gathered data on our teachers and our service providers who would need to be doing remote teaching work, and we are trying to match up those teachers with the students. Elementary classroom teachers will be Mansfield Public School teachers. Okay, and certainly we will, we'll make sure that they are licensed in the elementary or early childhood grade for which they teach. So that's the virtual remote cohort, and we did have a survey out to families, ask them to give us the word by last night. We had some additional names come into us this morning, but right now we are in the process of matching students with teachers. And again, for those of you who have enrolled in the virtual remote cohort, you will receive your child's teacher's name at the same time as all of the other placement letters go out. And, so I was talking with one parent the other day, and she had said to me, well, I think I'd like my child to start with like the class that's going to go hybrid and then move to virtual remote. And my advice is that if you believe you want your child, either because the child needs to be virtual remote or because you're choosing that for your child, then I would say make that decision now and enroll them as virtual remote cohort now. Because those early days of school from September 16, whether they are doing the they're setting up a class. And so whether they are setting up a class that will be hybrid as of October, or they're setting up a class that will be virtual remote, you want to try to keep the consistency. The same teacher you're starting with, you want to continue with. And as I said, they will be separate teachers. Hybrid teachers and virtual remote are separate teachers. So questions on that, please log in, and we'll try to answer those as best we can as we continue with the presentation. But I think I turn it back to Dr. Sankey.
Thank you, Mrs. Murphy. Mrs. Murphy, we do have a couple of questions here that I think you might like to address.
Sure.
The first comes from a parent who would like to know what metric we would be using to determine the change from full remote to a hybrid model.
Well, we are planning on moving to hybrid the week of October 12th. And so we are looking at that. The school committee decided to begin remote because they wanted to allow us additional time to prepare for a hybrid model. They understand how complicated hybrid is. When you look at the continuum of models, there's the all full person, there's the remote, and then is hybrid in the middle. And so most people think, well, that is just a happy compromise. And it really isn't. It is the most complex, complicated model for which our teachers are being responsible. And so we needed additional time to prepare for that. So the metric that we're using right now is the plan that, we have been instructed by the state to have 3 different models of instruction. And for our district, because of the factors involved with the state's color coding of health, and because of the fact that we plan to be ready for hybrid, we are looking at moving into hybrid October 12th. And the school committee is going to continue working on those metrics to be able to make decisions, because certainly we may need to make another decision later in the year to go fully remote, or ideally, it would be fully in person.
Thank you, Mrs. Murphy. And just one more question from a parent who is asking for just a little bit of a description about what a virtual vendor is.
There's a number of them. There's one that we have been using in our district for a number of years. It is called Edgenuity. Oftentimes when we have students who have been having extended illnesses or extended absences, we utilize Edgenuity. It is a product that provides specific courses that that we can register for based on a child's or student's needs. We see more of that. We use that more frequently at the middle school and high school when it comes to particular courses that a student might need, whether it be credit recovery or summer remedial programs. But they do offer courses that would also be most appropriate at the elementary level. But as I said, that we have 2 teachers at each grade that we will be able to utilize or convert into virtual remote teachers as opposed to teaching in the classroom this year. Another program that I'm I am enthusiastic about is called Cont'd Academy. And that is actually a publicly funded program that provides courses and full day classwork for students. A lot of students over the last few years have been moving towards more online classes. When I say a lot, I mean, 5 years ago, we saw most students were within the school, but there are numbers of students who, for a variety of reasons over the past few years, have moved towards going to an online program. Again, different needs, whether it be physical, social, emotional, just different reasons. Different needs are met in different ways. And Cont'd Academy has been a very positive opportunity for many students. However, very difficult to get into Cont'd Academy. And they have expanded their numbers this year so that they can support many districts. But again, at the elementary level, I'm really looking more towards being able to utilize classroom teachers. Now, the specials, that will be another story. We're going to have to work on figuring out how to provide specialist education to students who are remote learners, because our specials teachers are used for a number of reasons. One is that in Mansfield, we have a strong belief in teaching the whole child, and that includes performing arts, visual arts, physical education, and then health at several grades. But those teachers also serve a function within our district, in addition to offering enriching opportunities and lessons for students. But they also serve a function that they provide planning periods, preparation time for our classroom teachers. So we are going to have to work through that. And so that's why I'm leaving it open, that we are working to the best of our ability to be able to provide Mansfield Public Schools teachers, but we may also need to use some of the supports from the state vendors.
Mrs. Murphy, thank you so very much for answering those questions.
You're welcome.
And I do know that there are some families that have questions about the option to go back to remote if they have decided to, initially be part of the hybrid. And we say that, in either case, whether you've selected hybrid or whether you've selected remote, your children are our students here in Mansfield. And we do leave that open to make that change. However, we do hope that you will communicate that to us as soon as you can, so that we can be prepared for those changes as they happen.
I would agree with that, Dr. Sankey. However, I also would say that if someone is looking to start in the hybrid model and are thinking that they would be in the hybrid model from September 16th through October 16th, and then go full remote, I caution a parent doing that, because at that point, a student would have spent a month with a teacher doing all those community building activities and getting to know that teacher and getting to know those classmates. And then if they go full remote, then they are going to a totally different class. And so I do think, for consistency, if people are looking at that remote model, then my advice as one who, works with a lot of young children, my advice is for that consistency and the uniformity is to be able to start with the full remote so your child can get to know the teacher who will be teaching your child all year long. Now, certainly going, later in the year. So if you really believe that you want to be hybrid all year long, but then let's say, come November, December, January, you say, oh, you know what, I really want to keep my child home. That's a different story. But if a parent is going into hybrid thinking that as of October 17th, they're going to change to remote, start remote. Get to know the teacher who will be your child's teacher for the whole year. And you're correct that certainly we can have that, but I think it's also important for families to know that you and Mr. Gentili and Ms. Byer are doing class placements based on a certain class list. And so you're trying to balance boys, girls, high needs, low needs, just all of the above. And so you're really trying to have a well-balanced class on all ends, both the remote and the hybrid.
Exactly. Okay, thank you so much, Mrs. Murphy. So before we move on to the next slide, Mr. Gentili is going to speak about next steps. But I do want to mention that we did have a parent who was looking at the model remote learning schedule for the student's day and feeling like it was a lot for potentially a kindergarten student. And I do want to clarify that, again, this is a model schedule and we still have some details to work out behind the scenes. Also, I wanted to point out that the amount of time that students have with their classroom teachers in a whole group and in small group during different instructional periods in the day. When students begin the year, those times may be shorter in duration simply because our students are transitioning back to the classroom and they need to build up that endurance over the course of a day. So certainly those instructional times could be a little bit shorter to start. And then the hope is as we go through the year, those times would increase in duration. So I just wanted to point that out since we did have a parent who mentioned that they thought the schedule looked, pretty strong for our youngest students. So we are, again, working through some of those details. And again, we do want to be very mindful of what is developmentally appropriate for all of our students in grades K through 2. Okay, so next I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gentili, who's going to talk with us about next steps.
Thank you, Carrie. So as Superintendent Murphy had already mentioned, our ultimate goal is to transition to that hybrid model, which will add in-person days to the remote learning for all students. And our goal for that is, again, the beginning of the week of October 12th. To help prepare for that next phase, we will be hosting a hybrid information session, similar to what we're doing this evening, to share information with all of you about our hybrid model sometime during the week of October 5th. And again, our Robinson curriculum night will take place, and that'll be on Wednesday, October 7th. And that night will consist of screencastify videos that will be created by our classroom teachers. And these will be pre-recorded videos that will be sent to you via email on October 7th. And you'll be able to watch those videos whenever you would like. And I'm going to turn the next slide over to Dr. Sankey, and she's going to talk about next steps as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gentili. So our final slide will provide information to you about how you can contact us. But before we wrap up, I just want to go over to the comments section to see if there are any questions here that we maybe haven't answered at this point. So we have a parent who is asking about daily schedules, possibly being sent out with placement letters so that parents can plan when students will need to be online and working with them, or when students will be needing to work independently. And as far as I know, our placement letters are due to go out approximately around September 9th. And we will do our best to ensure that teachers are in touch with families as soon as possible. Again, we are still working on placements ourselves, Mr. Gentili and I, and Mrs. Beyer. And so we need to finalize those and get that information to our classroom teachers before they would be able to get in touch with our students. And so we will do our best to encourage them to reach out to you as soon as possible about what their schedules will look like. So those will be in the process of being finalized as we go through the next week or two. I also know that there are some questions about masks, and some families are asking why students in kindergarten and grade 1 are not required to wear masks. We strongly encourage students in kindergarten and in first grade to wear masks, and we encourage that, for a variety of reasons that are pretty obvious. However, the state does not mandate that students in kindergarten and first grade wear masks. So therefore we, as a result, cannot mandate that they wear masks. However, we do strongly encourage that, and we would continue to do so when students do return as part of the hybrid model. So let me just go quickly through here, and Nicole, I'm wondering if there are any clusters of questions that you may have seen that we could address here.
Yes, wondering, when is the remote cohort due, the survey? I'm forgetting the new date.
I think it was last night.
I think you're correct.
Yeah. So if the parent is interested in enrolling their child now, they should reach out to, I can't remember who you wanted it going to, Dr. Sankey. What name did you give me today?
So I would have given that to Nicole Reynolds.
Oh, Nicole, very good. Yep. So yes. Parents could call the school and let you know, and then you folks can place accordingly.
Sure. Okay, and I see.
And then another big question is, can we have an FAQ? Sorry about that. Could we have a FAQ emailed out to families for all the questions in case I missed some?
Absolutely. We can definitely do that. And we will also include answers to these questions in our upcoming newsletters. There's a lot that's going to be happening these next couple of weeks, and we plan to send out principals newsletters to you. Those will come to you through email. So in case you have had an email change, recently, please reach out to us. We can add you right in on that. Or if you find out that another parent got the newsletter and you did not receive it, please get in touch with us and we will add you right in. And I see here that some folks have questions about student schedules being the same each day or each week so that parents can plan accordingly. And I do have to say, yes, that is our ultimate goal, is that our daily schedules are consistent from day to day. Occasionally, there might be some minor changes, but the classroom teachers will be in communication with you and will let you know about those as they come up. But we are planning to have very predictable schedules each day so that parents can plan accordingly. In addition to that, I know that some families were worried about the attendance piece and were worried about, what if I cannot get my student onto a live Google Meet because I have a conference call with work? So what you would need to do in that case, and we understand that there are several families that would be in that situation where you're trying to balance working at home with helping your child learn. What will need to happen is you will be in touch with your classroom teacher to let them know that, you might not be able to be in attendance at the morning meeting, or you might not be able to be in attendance during a whole group meeting, but that you will watch the Screencastify video that teachers are putting together to go along with the lesson as well, and that students will be able to complete their participation in that way. So I just want to make that clear, because we've had quite a few people ask those questions, and we know that with our little students, they do rely so much on adult support. So I want to make sure that we address that. And then finally, I see that parents are asking about how will we ensure that students are meeting benchmarks under the remote learning. And so all of our curriculum is aligned with the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks. We've worked in depth this summer on our curriculum pacing guides for both literacy and math. And our intention is to deliver curriculum and to have it be paced out along with those curriculum framework power standards, which allow us to focus on the most important pieces of curriculum in all of the areas, not only in literacy and in math, but also in science and social studies. Teachers are then going to need to determine, and they will be working on determining which assessments they will be able to administer from the remote standpoint and how student work will be turned in. So that is still yet to be determined. But we have these, last few details to work out, and then those assessments will be communicated to parents so that you are aware of what our plan for not only the delivery of curriculum is, but also for assessments. And as you know, assessments can take a couple of different forms. We do formative assessments where a teacher is simply checking for understanding. And then we might do some more in-depth assessments where a student might have a short topic test that is given out through the Google Classroom. So stay tuned for that. Those are some of the details that we still need to work out, but we're getting there. And I'm so proud of all of the work that my teachers have been doing over the summer. So at this point, I think I am feeling pretty comfortable with answering the questions that are here. I'm just going to take one more look down. Some folks were asking about reading specialists and how that would work, how small group reading would take place. And again, in our student daily model schedule, we were trying to show you how we could best deliver a student day that replicates what a day would typically look like here at school. And of course, again, we need to be very mindful of making sure that the screen time is developmentally appropriate for our students. Again, possibly starting with shorter amounts of time and then building up as students develop the endurance over time and their ability to maintain their attention while on screen. So small group reading will happen just like the other small groups that would happen typically throughout the day. So for example, in a literacy block, the classroom teacher may open the literacy block with a whole group Google Meet, where he or she is providing an overview of the concepts and skills that students are learning about. Then, following the whole group, the teacher would assign students to small groups of possibly 3 to 4 students, and those small group assignments would be communicated to parents so that they know that, okay, my child is in group number 1. So my child's small group meet will take place from, this time to this time. So for example, from 9:15 to 9:35. And then a child that's in small group number 2 might have a small group meeting from 9:35 until approximately 9:55, and so on. And so students would rotate in and out of those small group meetings with their teacher. And that would also include the reading specialists, while other students are working independently. And I have to steal a quote from our assistant superintendent, Michael Connolly, where he says that the Google Meet is sort of like the doorway to the classroom. So what would happen is the classroom teacher would keep her Google Meet open on the screen. And when the whole group meeting concludes, the teacher would then say, okay, it's time for us to move to small groups. And at that time, students will know, okay, I'm in group number 1, so I'm going to stay, while other students will say, okay, this is my time to go and work independently on this other task, possibly in one of our workbooks that the students will have at home. So I hope that kind of explains how that small group and whole group rotation will work. And again, reading specialists and our special education teachers that during a typical school day would sort of rotate in and out with students during that math and literacy time, they will continue to do so in the remote learning model. Okay, so I think, let me just scroll down a little bit more. Okay, so I think we are all set with questions. There will be a fact sheet, as Mrs. Reynolds had indicated earlier. We will put together a fact sheet, and we're going to be sending a lot of information out again about the student materials distribution. We have shopping bags with students' names on them. And we are going to start to stock those with the student materials, and we are waiting for some coordination with our technology department about when Chromebooks will be ready for distribution. So we expect to be in touch with all of you very, very soon. On this final slide, again, please reach out to us at any time. You can reach us by email or telephone. We're here for you. We want to help you. We want to make this transition into remote learning as smooth as possible for students. We want them to feel connected with their classroom teachers. We want them to feel cared for. That's number 1. And again, we want to make this process go as smoothly as we can. So with that, I'm going to say thank you so much on behalf of myself, my assistant principal, Mr. Gentili, Mrs. Reynolds, my office assistant, Superintendent Murphy, and Assistant Superintendent Connolly, who I know is in our viewing audience, and also Nancy Beyer, our Assistant Special Ed Elementary Director. I'm going to say thank you to everyone, and we hope you have a wonderful evening. Good night.